Buenas tardes. This is Dr. Casas, y esta es la hora con el Dr. Casas. This afternoon, I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to provide my brief to President-elect Donald Trump. So, sir, as is my way, I begin all my presentations by first giving thanks to Christ for everything He's given me. I give thanks to my parents for legally immigrating from Mexico. I simply would never have had the opportunities in Mexico that I have here. I give thanks to the United States of America for being the absolute best country on the planet in the entirety of world history. And I give thanks to the United States Army for having served a total of over 29 years. Never did I think that a kid who grew up in Baldwin Park could retire as a full-bird colonel. So, sir, again, my name is Dr. Pedro Antonio Casas, Colonel, United States Army, retired, and I am a licensed clinical, forensic, aeromedical psychologist. I served in 2003, the first deployment, first push into Iraq. I returned to Iraq in 2005 as the Chief of Behavioral Health for 4th Infantry Division. I then served as a commander in Afghanistan in 2012, commanding Combat and Operational Stress Control Detachment. My headquarters was in Kandahar. In addition to that, I've served with the 82nd Airborne. I'm a paratrooper. Served with 2nd Infantry Division along the DMZ. Obviously, I've shared 4th Infantry Division. I've been the chief of behavioral health departments. I've also had jobs within the Pentagon. So, sir, my commitment is to my country, and my loyalty is to you as our Commander-in-Chief per Army values. So, where to begin? Sir, my first recommendation is that you direct all intelligence and all military assets to immediately work with the Israelis and find the 7 American hostages and do everything possible to bring them home alive. Sir, I think we've got to be very blunt on this one. For over a year now, this has not worked. The current path under the current administration has not gotten American homes, a home rather. So either people need to work with us, or they need to get the heck out of the way, or they suffer the wrath of the American military if they're between us and Americans. Moving on to point number 2, and that is Iran has declared asymmetric warfare against the United States of America for decades. They took over the American embassy in 1980, and they've had a Shia Islamic extremist regime ever since. In 1983, Iran was responsible for the murder of 241 Marines in Beirut. In 1996, Iran was responsible for the death of 19 Air Force service members at Colbert Towers. In the 2000s, Iran manufactured explosively formed projectiles that were then used against American service members in Iraq. In the 2010s, President Obama provided Iran with a sweetheart deal that did absolutely nothing to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Shockingly, President Obama provided Iran with $400 million in cash as he left the White House. That brings us to October 7th of 2023. Without Iran, without the funding and the weaponry that was provided, that never would have happened. Along this line of thought, we have Iran will continue to use its proxies, whether it's a next assassination attempt against you, whether it's the next preparation of attack against Israel. Iran will continue to use its proxies to achieve a Shia Muslim extremist theocracy in the Middle East. I want to go on a brief tangent to make sure I'm clear on this point. So you have 4 years ahead of you. They don't think that way. They think forever. Let me give you an example. In 1993, the Blind Sheik attempted to take down the World Trade Centers. And Americans simply did not understand that once that directive was given, that they were absolutely going to come back to that. And on September 11th of 2001, they came back to that. This is how they think. Their thinking is qualitatively different than the way we think. So Iran funds Hamas south of Israel. Again, they are Sunni Muslims. Iran funds Hezbollah with our Shia Muslims. And typically Sunnis and Shias don't get along. Iran funds the Houthis, which the Biden administration took off the terror watch list. Iran is going to continue to export terrorism as best they can, including what I think is asymmetric warfare against us. My recommendation, sir, is that you consider this thought pattern when you deal with Iran in the future, and that your policy establish our national security and our strategic way ahead, not just for the next 4 years, but that you're thinking way beyond that. Moving on to the Gaza. So, background. In 2005, Israel gave the Gaza, and the deal was that this would lead to peace for Israel. Instead, 2 years later, Hamas took over Gaza. And instead of developing an infrastructure for peace, for top-notch schools, top-notch hospitals, all which was funded through external funding, including the United Nations, which means American taxpayer dollars paid for that. Hamas instead built the world's largest asymmetric military base in a civilian population. So, the big point is, must protect our allies, the Israelis, at all cost. The Iranian plan is simple: kill every Israeli and replace Israel with the Shia Muslim extremist country. That is a simple mission. That ties into number 2 that I just described about Iran in terms of planting a thought process and how to view their thinking. Moving on. Russia. Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. Russia invaded the Crimea in 2014, and Europe did nothing. Russia invaded the Ukraine in 2022. I think you're spot on, sir, about your assessment that they saw the absolute catastrophic withdrawal, retreat from Afghanistan, and they realized that Joe Biden simply did not have any competence. But I want to bring out a specific point on this, sir. Tucker Carlson, in his interview with Putin mentioned in the hours-long interview, Putin came back to one point, and only one point, again and again. And that point was the expansion of Russia to pre-1917, and he specifically stated Poland twice. So we have a very clear indicator of what his thinking is long-term. So what does right look like at the national defense level, at the strategic level for the United States and our allies? I disagree with anyone who says this is a NATO issue. It's not. This is a European issue. Most countries in Europe are NATO. Some countries are not. However, it affects all of Europe. So if we want a successful, safe Europe, we've got to include those non-NATO countries to push Putin out of the Ukraine. Sir, it'll be your determination if there should be any effort to push Putin out of the Crimea or out of Georgia. So what does this look like? My recommendation, sir, invite all the heads of state from each country in Europe, meet at Camp David, and if they each provide a brigade, they can literally get this started next summer when the fighting season kicks in, and push Putin out of the Ukraine within 3 months, on the assumption that every NATO and non-NATO country in Europe contributes. This is their fight, sir. And it is shocking to me that they literally are making the exact same errors that Europe made prior to World War II. And even at the beginning of World War II, once Hitler invaded Poland, the rest of Europe literally put their heads in the sand and were hoping that he would stop. That rationale didn't work then. That rationale will not work now. If you follow my recommendation on this one, sir, I recommend that you assign a supreme commander. Whoever that commander is, that combatant commander should be American, to make sure everyone is working on the same page and we can accomplish that mission. Moving on, sir. China. Obviously, China has Taiwan in its sights. Obviously, Taiwan is invading in the southern part of the South China Sea, which is right next to the Philippines, and thousands upon thousands of miles away from mainland China. They're doing the same thing they did in 2008, where they made man-made islands, and instead of being navigation beacons, which was their claim, instead those man-made islands now have surface-to-air missiles. So China is absolutely a threat. And I'm going to challenge anyone who thinks we need to rank order threats. That is naive. We have a number of valid threats. They each have the risks of what they're trying to accomplish, and they each have greater risks. But the idea that we just simply rank order them, I think, is naive. I think we've got to go beyond that. So where am I going with this? Our Navy no longer has the capability to fight 2 regional wars at the same time and win. That era is gone. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the ships and all the other ships that we need to do this. I recommend that you immediately get your team to work on this. You need a 90-day, within 90 days, you need them to brief you at your desk on what we actually have, what we need to win 2 regional wars, and what is a specific plan to get there. Along that line of thought, we don't have these service members. We're at the lowest level of service members in the history of our country in terms of recruitment. Where I live here in Los Angeles, and having run for Congress, gotten a super late start because I was still active duty until late 2023. Most of the high schools do not have a JROTC program, which is absolutely shocking. Aside from that fact, the number one showstopper for our youngsters serving our country is that they're obese. So if we had JROTC programs and they're doing physical training each morning or each afternoon, we could literally address the number one showstopper to meet our numbers. And if we had JROTC programs who are run by our vets who know how to apply manuals and provide that mentorship, we could literally create a win-win situation for vets and for the next generation of warfighter. Even 25 kids per year per high school would make a difference, because that would be 100 kids per high school multiplied by every high school and every school district. We could meet any goal we establish in terms of meeting our numbers for the next generation of warfighter. Also related to China is the issue of fentanyl. Sir, fentanyl is killing 300 Americans per day. China is also responsible for that. Bringing this one up to your attention, sir, you recommend some aggressive action on this one. The only question is, how much is the Chinese Communist Party supporting that directly? Moving on, I recommend that you immediately, via executive order, direct all the armed services and the entire federal government to immediately stop any DEI, to immediately stop any critical race theory, to immediately stop anything else that could be viewed as a woke policy. Brief example, about 1 to 2 years ago, we had a full-bird female colonel, American of Caucasian descent, give her speech in front of the entire student body at West Point, with the commandant present, on how she had some sort of special white privilege. Sir, that nonsense absolutely needs to stop. Not only is it factually incorrect, but it is divisive and it is tearing our country apart. And for those who may listen to this presentation and challenge me, the reason it's absolutely untrue is that for white privilege to exist, that means that someone who is an American of Caucasian descent right now is actively doing something to discriminate against everyone else. And that simply is not so. Sir, moving on to illegal immigration. Concur and support, in fact, strongly concur and support everything you've done. One point I want to make out to you. In 2012, Obama, via executive action, began DACA, which was completely unconstitutional. For whatever reason, the Republicans of that time did not immediately take it to the Supreme Court. By the time they did, on the process of DACA, prior to your administration, the 5-4 liberal court ruled that we could not just eliminate a federal program that was already established, even though this federal program was completely unconstitutional. So my point to you is, sir, this is a muddle. This is absolutely a muddle. My recommendation, everyone who just got here, they all need to go. And we've got to get that wall built. We must protect our sovereignty, or we will go the route of the fall of the Roman Empire. It is literally that simple. And my appeal to you, having grown up in the Los Angeles area, having seen people who fall in the DACA limbo category because of this foolishness by President Obama, is that we clarify that policy as part of your next law, and it's gotta be incorporated to the next generation of immigration law. That for this group that has been around for generations, that we give them the path to becoming an American citizen. And that begins with earning their green card, which means, the common things such as no criminal activity, serving in the military, being productive to our society, not being a ward of the state, meaning they should not be obtaining welfare when they arrived here legally. We can go into more depth on that issue, but I wanted to at least plant that idea in your thoughts, sir. Again, I'm all about doing what I believe right looks like. Lastly, sir, in terms of my brief, those have all been national security, strategic level issues. One internal issue, and that is this. If you're born with an XY gene, you should only compete in sports with other individuals with an XY gene. You know, the current politics is absolutely destroying girls and women's sports for the simple reason that girls and women are becoming injured, and you know, men are going to win. It's that simple. This is not an issue of now wanting to identify as a woman if you were born a male. This is America. They can do that. But competing with women and competing with girls when you were born a male is absolutely unfair. Sir, subject to your questions. If you value any of my thoughts, your team can get a hold of me. I'm happy to go into more depth. I'm happy to help however you need. You know, my dog in the fight is the United States of America, and I'm absolutely loyal to President Trump, to you, sir, per Army values. And one of those Army values is loyalty. Loyalty to the Constitution and loyalty to your leaders. Sir, you are absolutely our leader. It's been my honor to present this, sir. It is my hope that I get some sort of reply at some point. I'll be happy to forward my curriculum vitae to you. Lastly, on a tangent, I'm going to do my best for you and for my country in the future as well. When I see the path that California has gone in the past 40 years when I left versus when I have just returned and what it looks like now, it is shocking to see the downhill slope that this state has taken. Yo soy el Dr. Pedro Antonio Casas y esta ha sido la hora con el Dr. Casas.